Hi, this is an IKC video lesson with Suzanne. This lesson is called Comparatives and Superlatives. This is part 1 of 2 lessons on comparatives and superlatives. At the end of this lesson, I hope that you'll be able to use comparatives and superlatives to express your opinion, make comparisons, and describe changes. Part 1 of this lesson is mostly about using comparatives, but we will talk about superlatives throughout the lesson. Part 2 of this lesson is about using superlatives. What are comparatives? Comparatives are adjectives that we change and use them to make comparisons or show difference between one thing and another thing. We use them to show change, and we use them to express opinions or preferences. Here are some examples. I am taller than my sister. This is making a comparison between myself and my sister. His English is getting better. This is an example that shows change. They think cycling is more fun than yoga. This is an example of expressing an opinion or a preference. Can you think of some comparatives to complete these sentences? We'll come back to them later, but I'll give you a moment to look at them, or you can pause the video if you need more time. Here are 3 ways that we use comparatives. Number 1, we use comparatives to show changes. And as I say each sentence, you can repeat after me to yourself. I am much happier now. He is feeling better today. It is more expensive to travel these days. The second way that we use comparatives is to express the difference between one thing and another thing. For example, yesterday was sunnier than today. Apples are healthier than cake. Driving is much more dangerous than flying. And in each of these examples, we're using comparatives to show the difference between one thing and another thing. So in the first example, yesterday is different than today. Yesterday was sunnier than today. Apples are healthier than cake. So we're showing the difference between apples and cake. Driving is much more dangerous than flying. We're showing the difference between driving and flying. Here's the third way that we use comparatives. We use them to show that one thing depends on another. And we use the to form this type of comparative sentence. For example, the more you sleep, the better you feel. This means if you get a lot of sleep, you will feel better or you'll feel good. So, feeling better depends on getting more sleep. Here's another example. The harder you study, the faster you learn. This means that if you study a lot, you'll learn fast. Learning fast depends on studying a lot. Remember those basic comparative sentences from the beginning of the lesson? Here's a chance for you to try to complete them using the comparative adjectives in the box below. And at this point, you can pause the video if you need more time to look. Otherwise, I'll show you the answers. Apples are healthier than cookies. My parents moved in, so we need a bigger house. Summer is more humid than winter. She's never felt happier. Watching TV is more exciting than reading a book. Classical music is nice, but I prefer more modern music. Here's another opportunity to practice. Complete the sentences using the adjectives in the box. And at this point, you can pause the video to read or take notes, and I'll give the answers now. The faster you drive, the more dangerous it is. The more you exercise, the fitter you become. The more you practice, the better you get at English. And all three of these are examples of using comparative adjectives to show that one thing depends on another thing. Okay, here's how we form comparatives and superlatives. We're going to talk a little bit about superlatives here, but we'll discuss the grammar more in part 2 of this video lesson. To form comparatives and superlatives, we usually add and est to the adjectives. For example, short, shorter, shortest. High, higher, highest. Smart, smarter, smartest. Warm, warmer, warmest. When you have a word that ends in a vowel plus a consonant, that means you double the consonant when you're forming the comparative and superlative. Big, bigger, biggest. Hot, hotter, hottest. If the word ends in E, then we just add R and ST. For example, large, larger, largest. Nice, nicer, nicest. If the word ends in Y, we take away the Y and add IER or IEST. For example, noisy, noisier, noisiest. Busy, busier, busiest. Happy, happier, happiest. Easy, easier, easiest. Some longer words, which are 2 or more syllables, take more and most to form comparatives and superlatives. So instead of changing the word itself, we add the words more and most to form the comparative and superlative. For example, the word careful, when you're using it as a comparative, becomes more careful instead of carefuler. And we say most careful instead of carefulest. There are some exceptions to these, which I'll talk about in part 2 of this lesson. Beautiful, more beautiful, most beautiful. Modern, more modern, most modern. Difficult, more difficult, most difficult. There are such things as irregular adjectives, and in this case, the word changes completely. There aren't any rules for understanding how the words change to comparatives and superlatives. It's something that you'll have to memorize. These are words that come up a lot, so it's good for you to learn how these change. For example, good becomes better and best. Bad, worse, worst. Little, less, least. Many, more, most. Here you're going to complete the table to form comparatives using some of the tips that we just talked about in the previous parts of the lesson. And here I'm going to do the first one for you. And again, at this point you can pause the video if you need more time. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and show the answers. And here we have clean, cleaner, cleanest. And then sharp, sharper, sharpest. Difficult, more difficult, most difficult. Lonely, lonelier, loneliest. Few, fewer, fewest. Friendly, friendlier, friendliest. Expensive, more expensive, most expensive. Fine, finer, finest. And finally, one last practice exercise for you. Can you use a comparative to complete this sentence? Denmark is blank than my home country. And that concludes part 1 of this video lesson on comparatives and superlatives. Thank you very much for watching.